You pride yourself on it, don't you? Your honesty. In a world of fake smiles and careful compliments, you're the one who isn't afraid to tell it like it is. You're the straight shooter, the one who gives it to people raw and unfiltered. You call it brutal honesty, and you wear it like a badge of honor. You think it makes you authentic. You think it makes you a good person. But what if you're wrong? What if that trait you're so proud of isn't a virtue at all? What if one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived would look at your brutal honesty and call it what it is, a vice? This is the story of how your favorite brand of truth-telling might actually be a form of social violence, and what a 2,000-year-old philosopher, Aristotle, says you should be doing instead. You think your brutal honesty makes you a good person? What if I told you it's more likely a sign of laziness, a way to avoid the hard, skillful work of being a genuinely good human being? We're told to be authentic, be real, don't sugarcoat things. But in practice, that often translates into a license to be cruel. A friend shows you a new painting they're proud of, and you immediately point out the flawed perspective. A colleague gives a presentation, and you're the first to announce their core premise was weak. You tell yourself you're helping. You tell yourself you're just being honest. But the aftermath tells a different story. A deflated friend, an alienated colleague, a partner who learns to stop sharing things with you. Long after you've forgotten your own words, the person on the receiving end is still feeling their sting. The problem isn't your honesty, it's the brutality. And to understand why this is a deep character flaw, we have to unravel a 2,000-year-old idea that's more relevant today than ever: the tyranny of telling it like it is. Our culture seems to glorify radical transparency. From corporate mantras to self-help books, the message is clear. The truth, no matter how harsh, is king. We've turned the person who isn't afraid to say what everyone else is supposedly thinking into a kind of hero. They're the disruptors, the mavericks, the ones who cut through the nonsense. And they often defend their behavior with a simple phrase: "I'm just being honest." That statement is a powerful shield. It reframes a potentially hurtful act as a virtuous one. It's a way of saying that if you feel hurt by their words, the problem isn't their brutality, it's your inability to handle the truth. Phrases like "no offense, but," or "I'm just telling you for your own good," are the classic calling cards. They deliver a payload of criticism and then wash their hands of any responsibility for the emotional fallout. The focus shifts from their lack of tact to your supposed oversensitivity. Let's be clear about what the brutally honest person is really doing. They see themselves as a lone warrior of truth in a world of cowards. But more often than not, this is a self-deception. When you tell a friend their new business idea is doomed to fail, without offering any constructive path forward, is that courage? Or is it just the easiest possible route? When you tell your partner that the outfit they chose is unflattering moments before they walk out the door, are you being helpful? Or are you just offloading a negative impulse without considering its impact? This isn't courage. It's a form of social laziness. It's a complete abdication of the responsibility we all have to communicate with care. Real communication is difficult. It requires empathy. It requires us to consider the other person's state of mind, our timing, our tone, and our ultimate goal. Is the goal to genuinely help, or is it to get something off our chest and feel superior for a moment? Brutal honesty almost always serves the latter. The psychological damage this causes is clear. It erodes self-esteem and fosters an environment of fear, not trust. A partner who is constantly subjected to brutal honesty learns that vulnerability is dangerous. They stop sharing their ideas and their insecurities because they know those delicate things will be met not with support, but with a hammer. The brutally honest person is often left wondering why they feel so isolated, mistaking the silence of others for weakness, never considering that it's a defense against their own verbal recklessness. The problem is, our modern world often gives us a false choice. You're either honest or you're a liar. But what if there's a third way, a higher path, that is both truthful and compassionate? To find it, we need to turn away from the noise of the 21st century and listen to the wisdom of a man who walked the earth in the 4th century BCE, Aristotle. The Philosopher's Verdict, introducing Aristotle's Golden Mean. To understand Aristotle's devastating critique of brutal honesty, you first have to get his central project. In his masterwork, The Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle wasn't obsessed with abstract ideals. He was obsessed with a deeply practical question: how do we live a good life? How do we flourish? His answer wasn't a list of rigid commandments like, "Thou shalt not lie." Aristotle's system, known as virtue ethics, is a lot more nuanced. He argued that living a good life isn't about blindly following rules, but about developing a virtuous character. It's about becoming a person who instinctively knows the right thing to do, at the right time, in the right way. The cornerstone of this idea is the golden mean. Aristotle proposed that every virtue is a perfect balance point, a mean, that lies between two opposing vices, a vice of deficiency, too little, and a vice of excess, too much. The classic example is courage. The vice of deficiency is cowardice. This is the person paralyzed by fear. The vice of excess is recklessness. This is the person who rushes into danger without thought. The virtue, the golden mean, is courage. The courageous person feels fear, but acts appropriately despite it. Think of generosity. The vice of deficiency is stinginess. The vice of excess is wastefulness. The virtue is generosity, giving the right amount to the right people for the right reasons. Now, let's apply this powerful framework to truthfulness, and you'll see the modern idea of brutal honesty start to crumble. Aristotle doesn't see honesty as a simple true-false binary. He puts it on the same spectrum. The vice of deficiency is dishonesty or lying by omission, being spineless when a difficult truth needs to be spoken. But what's the vice of excess? It's telling the truth, yes, but too much of it, or in the wrong way, or without any regard for context or the feelings of the other person. The vice of excess is truth without any other virtue to temper it. It is, precisely, what we call brutal honesty. In the Aristotelian view, the brutally honest person is just as vicious, just as far from virtue as the liar. So, what is the virtue? What is the golden mean? Aristotle called it aletheia, or truthfulness, but his definition is far more demanding than just not telling lies. The truly virtuous person, according to Aristotle, says the right thing to the right person at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. Read that again. It's a breathtakingly high standard. It reframes honesty from a simple act of dumping information into a sophisticated skill. It implies a statement can be factually correct and morally wrong at the same time. The person who blurts out a painful truth at a party to humiliate someone isn't being virtuous, even if it's true. The manager who crushes an employee's confidence with harsh feedback in a public meeting isn't being virtuous, even if the feedback is accurate. They failed on almost every metric: wrong time, wrong place, wrong way, and likely for the wrong motive. This is the first brutal truth from Aristotle. If your honesty is brutal, it is by definition not a virtue. It is an excess, a character flaw as significant as cowardice. You're not a straight shooter. You're being socially clumsy and ethically unsophisticated. The secret vice of the honest person, boastfulness astral. But Aristotle doesn't stop at branding brutal honesty as a vice of excess. He goes deeper, and his next insight is even more cutting. He connects the way we present ourselves to two other vices, boastfulness, alazonia, and its opposite, self-deprecation, ironia. And it's here that we uncover the hidden motive behind much of what passes for brutal honesty. For Aristotle, the virtue of truthfulness wasn't just about how we speak about the world, but about how we represent ourselves. The person in the middle, the truly truthful person, is one who calls a thing by its own name, owning to what he has, and neither more nor less. On one end, you have the boaster, who pretends to have qualities they don't, or exaggerates the ones they do. On the other end, you have the self-deprecator, who downplays their own qualities. So how does the brutally honest person fit in? On the surface, they don't seem like a boaster. They're telling the truth. But Aristotle would argue they're engaging in a subtle and therefore more insidious form of boastfulness. They aren't boasting about facts, but they are making a grand claim about their own character. When someone says, "Look, I'm just going to be brutally honest," what are they really saying? The subtext is a performance. It's a signal to everyone. Look at me. I am the courageous one. I have integrity. I'm not like you, who are too afraid to say what needs to be said. It centers the entire interaction on their supposed moral superiority. The act of telling the truth becomes a vehicle for self-praise. They're boasting about their own frankness. This is why Aristotle notes that the motive matters. The brutally honest person may not be seeking money, but they are seeking a reputation, that of being authentic, tough, and righteous. Their honesty isn't a gift to the receiver, it's a billboard for their own ego. This becomes painfully clear in a real-world scenario. Imagine your friend just went through a difficult breakup and asks, "Do you think I'll ever find someone again?" The brutally honest friend might say, "Honestly, not if you keep acting so needy. It's a huge turnoff, and that's probably why your ex left." This might contain a grain of truth, but it's delivered with the grace of a wrecking ball. The primary effect is to inflict pain and assert the speaker's superior insight. It's a boastful act disguised as help. Now consider the Aristotelian truthful friend. They would pause. They'd consider the context. Their friend is vulnerable and seeking reassurance, not a character assassination. A virtuous response might be, "I know it feels impossible right now. You have so much to offer someone. When you feel ready, we can talk about what you want from your next relationship and what a healthy one looks like." This response doesn't lie. It doesn't offer false hope, but it prioritizes the friend's well-being. It is truthful, acknowledging the pain while also being kind and constructive. It isn't boastful, it's genuinely helpful. For Aristotle, a life of falsehood is exhausting because you constantly have to maintain an image. The same is true for the brutally honest person. They are constantly performing their role as the truth-teller, which ultimately isolates them. The truly virtuous person, by contrast, is free because their actions are guided by genuine character, not by the need to project one. The missing ingredients: friendliness, wit, and social harmony. And this brings us to the final, and maybe most profound, part of Aristotle's argument. No virtue exists in a vacuum. For a life to be truly good, what he called eudaimonia, all the virtues must work together. You can't just be courageous. You must also be temperate and just. And you cannot just be truthful. Honesty, to be a virtue, must be balanced by Aristotle's other, often overlooked, social virtues. A person who is only truthful without any social graces is not a virtuous person. They're a social amateur, an ethical one-trick pony. Their honesty becomes a blunt instrument because they lack the other tools in the ethical toolkit. Two of these are especially important: friendliness and sexual wittiness. First, let's consider the virtue of friendliness, philia. This isn't about being a people-pleaser. Aristotle places friendliness as the golden mean between two vices. The vice of deficiency is being cantankerous or quarrelsome. The person who prides themselves on brutal honesty often falls right into this category. The vice of excess is being obsequious or a sycophant. This is the person who agrees with everything just to be liked. The virtue is friendliness. The friendly person knows how to be pleasant for the right reasons. They're agreeable when appropriate, but aren't afraid to disagree when a principle is at stake. The brutally honest person disregards friendliness entirely. But for Aristotle, the truly virtuous person understands that their duty to the truth must be harmonized with their duty to social decency. They ask, how can I be both truthful and friendly? That question forces a level of creativity and empathy the brutally honest person just bypasses. Next, Aristotle discusses a virtue that might seem strange to us: wittiness, eutrapelia. He saw having a good sense of humor as a moral virtue. The vice of deficiency here is boorishness. This is the humorless bore who is a dead weight in social life. The vice of excess is buffoonery. This is the clown who will say anything for a laugh, no matter how hurtful. The virtue is wittiness. The witty person has a refined sense of humor. Their jokes are clever and appropriate, never cruel. Why does this matter for honesty? Because the witty person has a masterful command of language and social context. Sometimes, the most effective way to deliver a difficult truth isn't with a sledgehammer, but with a gentle, witty observation that lets the other person see the truth without feeling attacked. Humor can disarm and make a tough message more palatable. The brutally honest person has no room for this. Their communication is one-dimensional, heavy, serious, and self-important. By failing to cultivate the social virtues of friendliness and wittiness, they are left with only one blunt tool. Aristotle's point is that we are social animals. Therefore, our virtues must work to make social life better, not just for us, but for our community. Brutal honesty corrodes social bonds. It introduces fear and resentment. It makes life more painful. Therefore, it works against the very purpose of ethics, which is to help us live well together. So, where does that leave us? With a powerful 2,000-year-old challenge to one of our most ingrained beliefs. Aristotle teaches us that true honesty is not a blunt instrument, but a surgeon's scalpel, used with precision and care. It's not about purging your unfiltered thoughts. It's about having the wisdom to know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it to achieve a genuinely good outcome. This isn't just theoretical, it's intensely practical. The next time you feel the impulse to be brutally honest, just pause. Stop and ask yourself Aristotle's questions. 1. What is my true motive? Am I saying this to genuinely help this person? Or am I saying it to feel right, to feel superior, or to vent? Is this an act of service or an act of boastfulness? 2. Is this the right context? Is this the right person, the right time, and the right place? Will saying this now, in this way, actually lead to a positive result, or will it just cause pain? 3. What is the golden mean? Between cowardly silence and brutal excess, where is the virtuous middle? How can I balance my responsibility to the truth with my responsibility to be a friendly, respectful human being? Answering these questions is hard work. It requires self-awareness, patience, and empathy. It's far more difficult than simply telling it like it is. But this is precisely Aristotle's point. Virtue is not easy. It's a skill acquired through deliberate practice. Being a good person is a craft to be honed over a lifetime. The ultimate lesson is that your words have power. They can be a weapon of casual brutality, leaving a trail of wounded relationships, or they can be a tool of profound good, a way to build trust and inspire growth. The choice between being a wrecking ball and being a skilled surgeon is yours. True honesty isn't brutal. It's wise.